Hey guys, welcome to the Zapata Brand Boxing Podcast. And we have a special guest coming up very shortly. Kevin Iole from KevinIole.com joins us to talk about UFC 299 and also the big heavyweight fight this Friday at 1 p.m. on PPV.com. Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua. All that and more on the Zapata Brand Boxing Podcast. Well, big fights in boxing and big fights at the UFC can only mean one person to the Zapata Brand Boxing Podcast, Kevin Iole from KevinIole.com, where you too can get this shirt that we all have with the
or this one
or that one. Not like we're promoting it, but get those great shirts. And you know what? Matter of fact, my wife said I look good in that shirt, and it's not often that she does say. So, Kevin, you're doing something right. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm doing great, buddy. I appreciate you buying this shirt, and I appreciate the plug for sure.
Oh, yes. Well, of course. It's a great logo. I love it. But anyway, let's quickly, we haven't spoken a little bit. We'll go back real quick. Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, the controversy here with the leaked sparring footage. What's your take on that real quickly?
Of the sparring footage when they were kids?
Yeah, but does it add to the fight or take away from what's going on with Ryan Garcia?
They fought, and I mean, a lot of people saw the fight. You know, they were highly regarded back then. And, you know, so many fighters have fought in the amateurs and then fought in the pros. And, you know, I don't think it really has any impact whatsoever, to be honest with you. It's just grist for the mill. People talk and they want to point out, you know, some people say, oh, it's significant. Look at what happened in this sparring session. Other people say, oh, it doesn't matter. I mean, it has no impact on what they're going to do on April 20th.
If the fight does come off.
Yeah. You know? And that, you know, I mean, I know you and I had talked about this before, George, and you know, you said you didn't think it was going to come off, and I did. But you know, the more time goes by and the way Devin is acting, I am worried for him because I mean, it is a health issue, right? People think mental health is something different than physical health, and it is 100% a physical health issue that he has. And you know, you would like to see him have that licked for good. You know, if he had cancer, we'd be all sending him prayers. We wouldn't be sending him into the ring to fight a world champion. And the more I see some of the things that he's doing and saying on social media, almost on a daily basis, and sometimes an hourly basis, George, it makes me wonder if he is really fit to fight.
That would be a question I think possibly down the road the state athletic commissions would have to look into as one of their medical examinations before someone fights. But that's here, neither here nor there right now. We are focusing on the Francis Ngannou Anthony Joshua fight this Friday, which, by the way, you will be a part of PPV.com with the great Jim Lampley. First of all, PPV.com, how exactly does that work, and how can people get a hold or listen to you guys there?
Well, just buy the pay-per-view from payperview.com. So just go to ppv.com and you can buy the pay-per-view. If you're on my site and you see any of their ads, you can click the ad. It'll take you right to the purchase of the fight. So you get it right there. But payperview.com is In Demand. And In Demand is the company that has dealt with the cable and satellite industry for years, providing pay-per-view events to them. And as things have gone more streaming as opposed to terrestrial over, you know, they created this thing, payperview.com, where you can just buy it directly from them as opposed to buying it from a cable or satellite provider. You can get it directly from them, as well as you can also, you know, different places. So they're giving the consumer more choices to buy. And their CEO, Dale Hawkins, and their vice president, Mark Picardi, are really progressive, and they're really trying to look at ways to get people interested in these fights and get them buying and participating. And they hired Jim Lampley last year. I think the first fight was Canelo and Charlo. And they liked it. They liked what happened. They had a good response. They've been using Lance Pugmire, ex of the LA Times, for a while. And they asked me if I would join this week, and, you know, that I cover both boxing and UFC. And, you know, I had a chance to work with Jim Lampley, you know, one of the legends in this business, one of the great play-by-play guys of all time. I said, of course.
Yeah, it makes sense to do that. So turning to the fight, we spoke when it was initially signed. Has your feeling turned at all? Or are you still leaning the way you were when this fight was first signed?
Yeah, I like Joshua to win the fight, but I talked to Dewey Cooper today. Dewey is the trainer of Francis Ngannou. And Dewey has a way about him. If he was a football coach, he'd make you want to run through the wall, right? I mean, that's the kind of guy that Dewey is. And I spoke for about 20 minutes, half hour with Dewey. It was 2 o'clock in the morning his time, and he was as fresh as a daisy and all fired up. And he has me convinced that Francis has more of a chance than I had previously given him. But I've been around a long time, and I know trainers believe in their guys, and trainers hype up their guys, and then fight night comes, and it's a different story. I do give Francis a chance because of how hard he punches. Right? You punch that hard, and you land one on the chin, you got a chance to win the fight.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, the likelihood of Francis doing that, I think, is still fairly low, especially against a guy who is going to go into this fight knowing that you knocked down Tyson Fury and knowing he can't afford mistakes, right? If he was the first one to fight Francis, then you say, well, he doesn't, like Fury did. Fury clearly did not respect him and did not take him, very,
Right.
very well. But if he turns around and he says, hey, I saw that Fury fight. I know what Francis can do. I'm going to try to train my hardest. I think AJ will be ready for him.
A couple things to your point. Number one, I think Dewey Cooper is very underrated in what he's done with Francis Ngannou here in this situation. But two, one thing your article said that I read about Anthony Joshua there with this fight, he has got to become what they've expected him to become in this fight now.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, does that shake up the whole apple cart for his career projecting towards? Obviously he wants to fight Tyson Fury. That's where he wants to go. If this shakes this up, there's a lot of regrouping to do here.
Yeah, if Ngannou wins the fight, let's call what you're asking me is if Ngannou wins the fight, is Anthony Joshua done? And I would say he's not done, but his path to getting back to a significantly relevant fight is no longer there. Fury wants to fight him, and I think win or lose, Fury they'll probably end up fighting at some point. Whether Fury loses to Usyk or Joshua loses to Ngannou or some combination thereof. I think the two of them will eventually fight somehow, some way, because that fight is too big of a fight in the UK, George. I mean, that's going to be a massive fight, a lot of money, a lot of fan interest, and it would take multiple losses by each man to prevent that from happening. But I think if Anthony, when Anthony is at his best, think of that Vladimir Klitschko fight. He was not backing off. He was not boxing off the back foot. He wasn't going to the ropes. He wasn't hanging in the corner. He was going toward Vladimir Klitschko, one of the great heavyweights of that generation, and a huge puncher. And he got hit and he got knocked down once. But he showed a lot of heart and a lot of want. And he came back and he won that fight, even after he got hurt badly a second time. And so I think Anthony, the point I was trying to make today is, he has to go out there and fight like he fought that fight. And he can't be willy-nilly and stick his chin out and let Francis, take a shot at him. That would be stupid. But I think he has to bring the fight to Francis, make Francis defend, make Francis back up, and blunt Francis's charge. And I think if he does that, his odds of winning increase dramatically.
Okay, yeah, I still am leaning towards Ngannou just because.
What do you see? Why?
I just feel for some reason it's one of these trap fights where he would get caught. That's the only thing I see. That's the only reason. And I think he's improved. Ngannou's improved so much in such a little time, but I think he's been through this hard life that it took him so long to get to this level that he's not going to let this opportunity go. Not to say that Joshua hasn't had it tough, but Joshua's made those $20-25 million paydays, and Ngannou wants to get there to change his whole life. And he's done such as of now, but I have a gut feeling something crazy is going to happen where Anthony Joshua gets knocked out. And I had the same feeling before the Andy Ruiz fight, only because I'd seen Andy Ruiz an interview with Evander Holyfield, who said the one person he wouldn't like to fight is Andy Ruiz. Said he is a heavyweight, he's got fast hands, he can punch real hard. And he sparred with him. And he said that's the one guy I would not want to fight.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought maybe this guy's good enough, and bang, he got knocked out. Just leaning that way. And I'm not the greatest at picking, but I've been pretty good the last two.
Well, Andy Ruiz was an interesting case because, he had been with Top Rank before the beginning of his career. And he was kind of a disappointment because Top Rank said a lot of the things you said about him. He punches hard. He has fast hands. For a big dude, Andy's always been a big guy. He had good feet, right? He was athletic. He could move. And so you sometimes will look at him and you think, yeah, he's not, but he was better than people thought. But he didn't always, A, have confidence in himself, and B, put 100% of his effort into either training or the fights. And he lost. So when he fought Joshua, it was like, you talk about a trap. That was a perfect trap because Joshua was thinking he was going to fight Big Baby Miller and this big guy that's going to stand right in front of him, who Big Baby Miller had no power. But he portended power because he had muscles upon muscles and everything. And I think AJ looked at him and like, haha, this will be an easy night. And now he gets Andy Ruiz and totally different scenario. So I think that's similar to what we see in this fight, except that Andy's been there, done that.
Right. The other thing what I was thinking is, when Anthony Joshua won his last fight against Wallen, they jumped on his bandwagon that he was back and this is the guy that, and for some reason I've always thought he always takes that and pats himself on the back a little bit and portrays this guy who's still has a lot of work to do as far as claiming he has to fight Tyson Fury at some point to claim this era, I would think. So that's the only thing I think. And I look at it like Berlanga. Berlanga was 16 knockouts. He was like set up for failure almost. But he may, in fact, land this Canelo fight just because of that. Whether he's ready for it or not, different story. But I'm still going to lean towards Francis Ngannou.
Okay.
So I this is what I'll do. So that'll lead us to, speaking of UFC and MMA, this weekend, which you will be covering. You are flying down there, if I'm not correct?
I'm going to Miami on Thursday.
And I saw your interviews with Sugar. I keep wanting to call him Sugar Sean O'Malley. What's your opinion on him as far as a star? What's his star power right now?
Really, 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 really big. I mean, and I think it can get a lot bigger. I think he can become the biggest star in MMA, and I don't think that day is far off. As long as Conor McGregor is an active fighter, I don't think anybody is going to surpass Conor McGregor, right? McGregor's just done it for so long and been at the top for so long, and he's so good at at promotion and getting bringing people in, that I don't think anybody is going to surpass him in the UFC. But I do believe that O'Malley has the ability to kind of be the next generation of Conor McGregor. If you just look at his Contender Series fight and look how many views that fight has. And I know it's been, several years now since that fight.
I think it's 25 million.
Right. And you compare it to any other fight the Contender Series had, and they're not even in the same ballpark, right? And O'Malley just is one of those guys people like to watch. And he's a knockout, he's skinny and he doesn't look like, that, but he, just like Francis Ngannou is a knockout puncher, look at he did to Aljamain Sterling. You see Aljamain Sterling, and he is a huge, huge fighter, especially at bantamweight. And, he got dropped by that right hand by O'Malley, and you didn't see him getting up or looking at, he was down and that was it. And O'Malley's got fast hands. He's really, really accurate. And I don't think it's like the physical strength power, like, George Foreman, Ali used to tease him, but when he went, like with that, George was slow, but it was just like that physical clubbing strength, and he would hit you and, oh my God, Sean's power comes from quickness, and he hits you with shots you don't see coming very fast, and he very accurate puncher. Those things make a difference, and I think I like O'Malley as a fighter a lot.
And I think even I was, not that I wasn't a fan of O'Malley. I saw him at the Contender Series and what have you, but I saw him on a couple of his interviews and what he was doing. I saw yours. He is a likable guy.
Yeah.
He
Well,
could really draw. What's that?
he's a smart guy, right? I mean, and he knows how to promote. And you see him, changing hairstyle and the crazy clothes he wears at all the fights, and the glasses and the whole 9 yards. He knows how to act like a star, and
Definitely,
yeah, you see that from him.
definitely pop culture. He's in tune to pop culture. But that you made a point there about Conor McGregor being the biggest star at this point. His star is diminished, in my opinion, unless he starts fighting here somebody. Because how long are we going to wait here?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of things going on there. So he had a really serious injury and he had multiple surgeries. So it wasn't just like one surgery and he was back. So he had, I want to say 4 surgeries, but it could be 3, but it was 3 or 4 surgeries, right? And now, that's been hard. It's going to be 3 years in July, right? It's been hard
Oh
for him
yeah.
to come back from that. And then, what, even now, nobody has said he is clear to fight, right? Like I specific a couple of weeks ago asked Dana White that question.
Uh-huh.
Is he physically clear to fight? And well, I don't know, like nobody has said, is he clear to fight? On April 6th, he will have been in the anti-doping pool for 6 months, which was one of the requirements when you retire and then you come back, or not even retire, but just leave the pool, which he did for a period of time, and then come back. You have to be in the pool for 6 months before you're allowed to fight again, unless there's, some circumstance would make it unfair. And so he will have been in the pool for 6 months on April 6th. That's why a lot of people thought he was going to fight April 13th, because now he's eligible for UFC 300. So, he's got, the movie Roadhouse that he did, and he's got to promote that, which is coming out in April. And so it's unlikely that he's going to be able to go out and fight a fight and then go promote his movie. So I'm thinking if we see him back, and he may, Dana White saying he may not want to fight again, but if we see him back, I think fall would be a good time to expect him.
But here's the thing: he's lost a bunch. He's really lost a bunch. If he gets in there, and what I feel, if he fights Michael Chandler, is a bad matchup for him. I think he loses to Michael Chandler, and that could definitely be the end of the Conor McGregor era.
Well, Conor reminds me in MMA in one way of Arturo Gatti, right? Arturo Gatti was such an entertaining fighter, and Arturo's entertaining was all in the ring, right? All action. Now Conor is an action fighter, but he also brings the jokes, and he's funny, and he gets people fired up at press conferences, and when he stole the belt in Dublin from Jose Aldo, that was a great thing. He held the belt up and the Irish crowd was going crazy, and Aldo was going nuts trying to get the belt back from him. Conor has that, he's a showman, and he makes people enjoy his fights. And I think even if he wasn't a championship threat anymore, which I don't think he is now, but if we just arbitrarily say he's not, I think he still has that lure because of the kind of fighter he is. He's a striker, he's aggressive, he's got knockout power, and man, can he sell the show.
Yeah, and his nemesis, Dustin Poirier, being in the co-main event against Benoit. What do you think of this one? It's a little, not that it's not bad. It's actually not a bad card in general, but I
Tremendous.
don't know. I don't know if Dustin Poirier is all in. I don't know if he's all in, to be honest with you.
Boy, I don't know if you saw my interview with him last week. I talked to him last week as well, and I got the sense that hey, he was that from me talking to him and having known him over the years. I got the vibe that hey, I got something to prove. Joe Rogan made that comment about Benoit Saint Denis. Oh, you look in his eyes and you better be afraid and all this. And I think Poirier's hearing these people start to doubt him. He got beat by Justin Gaethje. Who is this other loss to Oliveira, and he was getting some. Is he at the end of the line? And Poirier is such a good professional fighter, and he's so. Well, I'm trying to think of the word professional in what he does. Right. I think he's really into this fight, and he's one of the guys that's like been around, been at the top. He's beaten a lot of good people, and now here's this guy that's ranked 11th that has no significant wins. Hasn't beaten anybody in the top 10 or top 7, top 7, something like that. Maybe even, for sure, definitely not in the top 5. And he's getting all this love and all this attention. And I think Poirier is, noticing that and saying, watch me.
Now, I did get that impression that he was in when you had the interview with him, that you got that vibe from him.
Yeah.
I just think that when you start saying that you're retired and you want to do other things and it's hard negotiating with you, I don't think you're as in as you have to be in something like this. And I think this guy's a little bit hungrier. When you have, and I'm not saying he's a million. I guess he would be a millionaire.
Of course.
You're kind of comfortable a little bit. You kind of can take that breath. Unlike when he was coming up as that contender and fighting and scratching for everything he got. When you start talking retirement and moving on to other things, and I don't want this fight, I don't want that fight, it's a little harder to come back. In my opinion, he did come off good on your interview, though. He did. He sold a fight, and like you were saying, the card is pretty stacked here with other stuff. And you also got Michael Venom Page now coming on Kevin Holland. That's an interesting fight. What do you feel on Michael Venom Page? Does he get the UFC jitters, or is this just one of his stepping stones?
Well, I think Michael Page is a veteran, and he'll be able to handle the moment, right? I don't think there's any question about that. The question is going to be, is he good enough to deal with Kevin Holland? Because this is not going to be a wrestling match. This is not going to be a grappling contest. This is going to be a high-level kickboxing fight, right? These two guys, you could put this in glory kickboxing, and you have this would be a main event in that organization. These are both high-level kickboxers, and so can he deal with Kevin Holland? And I think that's what the issue is more than anything else. I mean, I lean toward Holland in the fight because I have seen Holland against high-level competition on a regular basis, and this is the kind of guy that really suits his profile. You saw the fight against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. That was, and I think it's going to be not the same fight, but a similar fight to that.
Okay. Well, as always, Kevin Iole coming in with the dropping knowledge here on my podcast. I appreciate it. And short time.
I'm dropping statements. We'll see if it's right. I'm dropping statements.
Well, I wouldn't want to bet against you. Kevin Iole from KevinIole.com, where, again, some of the best merch you can get right there on his website. It's a great logo. I look good in it. I can't guarantee you're going to look good in it either, but I know my wife said I look good in it. Kevin Iole, also PPV.com for the big fight this Friday, Ngannou versus Joshua, alongside the legendary Jim Lampley. Kevin, again, thanks for coming on.
Appreciate you, George. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.